Hey guys! So today you and I are going to talk about the biggest challenges. So let's get into it. So the question in question was, hi Frederick, what are the biggest challenges according to you in application development projects? That's a great question. So I would argue that the main thing to get right is that you need to get the right people, and that is the trickiest part. And the reason why I argue that is because when you start thinking in terms of either buying something or building something, it really comes down to, all right, when you're going to buy something, do you know what you're buying? When you're going to build something, do the people who are going to build it, they actually know what they're supposed to build? That's the first thing. And then the other thing is, do they have the skills to actually do it? Now that sounds obvious, but I promise you guys, it's literally the number one thing that I struggle with on practically a daily basis in my current position. I have tons of teams and managers and stuff like that who come and like we want to discuss how can we raise the quality of our software, how can we develop better, how can we follow better practices and so forth and so forth. And I always tell them the same thing. You see, the problem is never really to show how to do a thing if you have someone who really knows it, right? The problem isn't that you're not staffed with software developers or that you don't have like practices and like that there's no information related to how to do a certain thing. The real problem is, do you actually have the group of individuals who are knowledgeable enough and willing to do what is necessary in order to deliver successfully? And this is not a junior thing or a senior thing or anything like that. It's an individual thing, I argue, at the very least. I've been in with teams where the biggest thing that had a negative impact on the end result was not the fact that they had two or three like more junior experiences. It was that they had one senior software developer who had a really strong position, which basically meant that everybody else was forced to do it his way, and he was not open for discussion. I could not talk to him and show him, like, even though in this case I'm literally his boss, or well, more or less, I couldn't get him to do anything else. And so what do? The problem isn't that he can't deliver software. The problem is that it's only him who can deliver the software due to the choices that he has made. In another project, we've had situations where the product manager feels uncomfortable with the development process due to the fact that the tech leads, or like the people in the team, were really weak, in his opinion, of course, in terms of communication and business mindset. Again, not a question of that they can't write software. The problem is that they don't understand what type of software to build. They are primarily focused on just executing whatever he tells them, which is the thing that I've said a few times, guys. If you treat the stakeholder as the person who should know all the things, then you're pretty much screwed. It's the thing that I argue is the biggest miscommunication in software, where the software developers view, say, testing as something that they either do or don't, and that depends on who tells them, if like basically the product manager. And I argue that that is wrong. I argue that you need to think about yourself in terms of a craftsman or a doctor. If a doctor doesn't take the necessary precautions, or a builder, like a construction worker, or like someone's going to build like a house or something like that, you go to court, because you can't put the expectation on that the things that you need to do in order to cure the patient or give them the right medicine or build the building according to standards and legislations and stuff like that, you can't put that on the customer. The customer knows nothing, and it's your responsibility to do the things necessary in order to achieve whatever you're supposed to be doing, right? And these people, they didn't think in those terms, which of course then meant that the whole system was just crumbling and they didn't really care. So how do you fix this? Well, you don't. You don't fix it. That's my argument. It's the number one thing. Well, it depends maybe a little bit on culture here. In my region of the world, the the sentiment is usually that you can't get rid of people, you can't shuffle things around or so forth and so forth, because the problem with it is that if you try, and this is just what I argue, of course, if you try to move, let's say, a senior from one product to another, you have to do that without them ever understanding that they are not really a good fit for that specific project. Unless you're a really great manager, that's going to be a tricky thing to swing, to basically say that no, we can't use you for this project. It's even harder to get rid of an individual like that, for example. But as I've said in the start of things, like, getting the right people is everything. It does not matter what what framework you're using is pointless. It's pointless if you're writing tests or stuff like that, because fundamentally it is the craftsman who's going to dictate whether or not you're building the right stuff. Even if you're using the right practices, it's how you apply them that matters. And in such a situation, the only real situation that can, the only thing that you can really do about that situation to resolve it is either to change and to basically get the people who are not able to produce in accordance with what you want to do that. And I have never seen that happen without switching someone out, or corporate training for all its merit, and having workshops and stuff like that. I have never seen it. I've seen junior software developers grow and become proficient, and people take more responsibility and so on. So it's not like it can't be done, but I'm saying that it is the hardest thing for you to do, because you're basically almost in a situation where either you have to accept that the people who are producing at a certain level, they will continue doing so. You can give them encouragement and so forth, but there will come a point when you realize that you either have to switch them out or do some type of dramatic change, and then you're back to the same problem again. How do you know that the next person you're going to get is going to be a good fit and actually deliver and so forth? That is the trickiest part, I argue, and it basically all comes down to the same argument, and I think, or it's the same problem, and I think most industries can sort of relate to that. It's really hard to find good people. So what I want you to take away from this is that, in my opinion at the very least, the biggest challenge in application development is to find the right people for the job. Because the tricky part is that you need to, one part, understand what type of thing you're building, like the type of system that you're building, and what type of individuals you will need for that specific task or that specific setup. And you're also going to have to know the tools of the trade and all this stuff, so when you do get people, that you actually know who to hire for that position. The best analogy I can give you is, it's a little bit like trying to staff a football team. You need to know what players you're going to need, and you need to know how to, well, in my argument at the very least, there are people who scout talent for sports and stuff like that. They're usually people who know the sport and maybe have practiced it before, they were really, really good at it at one point, of being in tune with it. So when they're picking their players, they know what they're looking for, and they know the weaknesses of the current players and what they're going to need in other people and so forth and so forth. It's a similar sort of beast, I argue, at the very least. And so that is really, really difficult for the average IT company, because fundamentally you can't, even me, I can't just figure out by a 1 hour interview if this person is going to be the person who's going to step up and take charge of making sure that there's documentation, or that there's a basic DevOps setup, or whatever we might need for that specific situation. You can really only evaluate people based on their knowledge and a little bit of personal chemistry perhaps, but once they're in, it becomes very difficult to change that situation without either firing somebody or doing something that is politically within the ecosystem usually not the thing that you want. Because everybody wants everything to work out, right? But fundamentally, getting good results on a system it's not just down to having technical skills. It has to do with aptitude for the situation in question, or for the product that you're dealing with. It's the same thing you see in open source projects, or you see in the open market. Some companies do really, really well because they have really great ideas, and they develop basically the same product, and those are really well respected brands, because I argue, not of course the only thing that they have, but they usually have good people. They know how to get this thing done, and so that the customers are happy. And the open source projects are the same thing. Like there are people who can maintain open source projects and do it really, really well. These are different types of things, and it's the same thing when you develop software for any company. In one project, you might have like something like a shared library or something like that. If you're going to do that well, so that it really is something that everybody loves, not just one of those horrible things that nobody wants to use, you're going to need people who know how to run a community, or like maybe have some open source experience, and they have some social skills so they can connect with people and stuff like that. And in another project, maybe you have a really tough like domain model or like business logic or something like that. You're going to have need to have some people who are really, really great at figuring out expectations and specifications and stuff like that. And that is the fundamental thing. How do you the fundamental problem? How do you match the software developers that you have or you're getting to the specific project so that they kind of fit together? That's my argument, or at least that's, yeah. Let me know if you figure that one out. Have a great day.